This is the story of Adam's mouse. Browntail lay in the warm straw as 5 of her 6 youngsters played in the warm, fluffy lining of their nest. Her eldest son Samuel did not join in with their games. Why? Because Samuel was different from all the others. Samuel was always exploring, always on the move, always asking questions, so many questions. As soon as his bright little eyes had opened up for the very first time, the question started. Mama, why am I so pink? Mama, will I always be so small? And Mama, what's it like on the outside? Mama this and Mama that, so many questions. One day, whilst his mother was out gathering food, Samuel scurried to the entrance of the tiny nest hole and wandered outside. And from there he began to look around at the trees that seemed to reach way, way up into the sky. And as he looked up, his mind began to race with even more questions. Why is the sky so high? And why am I so tiny? He thought to himself. It was at that very moment he caught sight of something flying among the branches way above him. What a strange looking creature, he thought, and he decided that it must be one of the angels that his mother had told him about. Well, that's what he thought it was, with its beautiful white wings, its long slender body and its thin pink legs. Way above him, the angel flapped her wings and called out to 2 smaller angels that were sitting on the edge of a nest of twigs and sticks, encouraging them to join her in the sky. As Samuel watched in astonishment, the smaller of the 2 angels took to the air with a squawk of delight and joined the larger angel flying around in small circles in the warm morning sunshine. I didn't know that angels needed flying lessons, Samuel thought to himself. Meanwhile, back in the tall tree, the second angel, who was still balancing on the edge of the nest, seemed reluctant to join in with this game, and he took a step backwards where he felt safer. The large angel called out again. Don't be afraid, Solly. Come on, trust me, all you have to do is to jump and flap your wings just like I've shown you. On the ground way below, Samuel looked on as the small angel once again hopped awkwardly to the edge of the nest, and Samuel held his breath as he threw himself into the air. As he plummeted towards the earth, the small angel tried desperately to remember what he was supposed to do at this particular point. And just when it seemed he might crash into the thick ferns that carpeted the forest floor, he suddenly remembered and started flapping his wings for all he was worth. But he'd left it far, 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 far too late, and he crash-landed just a few feet from where Samuel was standing, twitching his spiky little whiskers and chuckling to himself. You're not much of a flyer for an angel, are you? He laughed. That is because I am not an angel, Solly answered, trying to look as dignified as possible as he plucked the fern leaves from his ruffled feathers. I am a stork, not an angel. A stork? Samuel said, still laughing so much he was shaking. What's a stork? I'm a stork. That's what a stork is. What's the matter with you? Have you never seen a stork before? Samuel squished his eyes up to take a closer look at Solly, who stood to his feet before him. So, you're not one of God's angels then? He asked. No, I told you I am a stork. A stork, Solly snapped. Well, I never, Samuel said, shaking his head in disbelief. Then it was Solly's turn to look at Samuel. So, what are you then? He asked, having never seen such a strange little furry creature with a strange tail before. Samuel thought for a minute and then started to dart back to the entrance of his nest hole, where his mother was just beginning to wonder where he'd got to. Well, he hesitated. I'm late for my dinner, that's what I am, he shouted as he scampered toward the roots of the old sycamore tree. But you haven't told me what you are, Solly shouted back. I'll tell you tomorrow, if you still want to know, Samuel shouted. Then he disappeared into the hole, leaving Solly wondering just what strange kind of creature his new friend really was. Now, Samuel's mother just knew that if anyone were to ask her the question she feared the most, it would be Samuel, and she wasn't wrong. What do you mean? You don't know what we are, Samuel gasped, hardly able to believe his little ears. Oh, it's a long story, his mother said, as she nervously preened her fur. It goes back to the time when Adam was given the job of naming all the animals that God brought to him in the Garden of Eden. All the animals went to Adam in their pairs and were given their names, but your great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-granddad fell asleep. He was so tired, he just fell asleep, and when he woke up, the whole thing was done and dusted. Everyone had gone home. So you see, we don't actually have a name of our own. Well, the following day, Sally flew down to the forest floor with slightly more skill than the day before, and landed by the bank of a small brook where Samuel was sitting with his head in his tiny hands. Oh, it's you, he said, as Sally tapped him on the shoulder with the tip of his wing. Well? The young stork asked. Well, what? Samuel snapped back. Well, what are you then? Did you find out? Samuel sighed, and then he told Solly everything his mother had told him the evening before. So that's that, Samuel said matter-of-factly. We don't have a name, and there's nothing that we can do about it. For a while, neither of the friends spoke, and in the end it was Solly who came up with a suggestion. I've got it, he said. It's simple, really. We'll have to go and find Adam and ask him to give you a name. Samuel let out another deep sigh. But it's nearly 200 years since Adam named all the animals. How will we ever find him now? You see, in those days, men lived a long, long time. Now, Solly always seemed to have an answer for everything, and today was going to be no exception. Well, my mum says that every year when all the storks fly beyond the Great Sea, they pass close to the place where Adam used to live. She says it's a beautiful place and it's called the Garden of Eden. So, Samuel mumbled to himself, kicking the pebbles on the brookside into the water, so we can fly there, you and I, and then we can find Adam and you can ask him to give us a name. Simple. Samuel looked up at Solly with a sort of squished up smile. It may have escaped your notice, my little angel friend, but whatever I am, I was not blessed with a pair of wings. So, how am I supposed to fly? Solly just laughed. He'd already thought about that. On my back, of course. On my back, Samuel, he said, flapping his wings in excitement. Over the next few weeks, Samuel spent a long time sitting in the feathers on Solly's back as his new friend practiced his flying skills. Nestled in those thick white feathers, he gradually got used to being carried way up above the thick canopy of the trees, and soon he was actually enjoying it. But, as you might imagine, Samuel's mother was more than a little anxious when she heard of their plans. But she knew that Samuel would not rest until he'd found Adam and been given a name for the whole of the family. And so it was finally agreed that Samuel would go with Solly just as long as he promised to wash behind his ears every morning and clean his whiskers after every meal. The migration of the storks from the Great Sea to the White Mountains began on the very same day. Soon the sky was filled with the gentle sound of thousands of splendid white wings beating against the warm air before rising in gentle spirals into the clear blue sky. 10,000 wings and just one tiny little bushy tail. Samuel nestled down into Solly's feathers as they flew through the air, and for the first time anyone could remember, he actually remained silent as he stared in wonder at the ocean of beating wings which rolled like gentle waves over the top of the trees and onward toward the far horizon. For 3 whole days and 3 long nights they flew on, never stopping, before coming to rest on the estuary of a large river. Standing on a rock, Samuel looked at the mountains that lay in the distance and began to wonder how they would ever find Adam. And he was still thinking about it later that night as he snuggled into Solly's warm feathers and drifted off into a deep, deep sleep. It took another 2 days of non-stop flying before the vast flock of birds landed once again, and Solly could search for some food. Meanwhile, Samuel scurried off to find himself something to eat. He was still tucking into some particularly juicy berries when Solly landed close by. "Mother says that we should pass over the garden tomorrow, Samuel," he said. "Oh, I just hope that Adam's still there," Samuel said, dribbling sweet blackberry juice all down his face. "Oh, don't worry, Samuel. We will find him. I just know we will," Solly said. "Let's get some sleep. We have a busy day tomorrow." The following day, as all of the families of Stokes rose into the early morning sunshine, Solly turned to his mother. "You won't forget to tell us when we get near the garden, will you?" he asked. His mother smiled back. "I won't forget, Solly. When we get there, I'll point you in the right direction and you should find the place easily. And when you're ready, you can come and join us at our summer home." "But Mother, how will I know where to find you if you leave me behind?" Solly asked. His mother smiled warmly, and gently stroking his head with the top of her wing, she whispered into the tiny feathers around his ears, "You'll know, Solly. You will know." For another whole day they flew together toward the far horizon, and then as the sun began to sink in the sky, the huge flock of storks started to make a long curving turn, a turn that would change their direction of flight and lead them to their summer home. And as they did so, Solly's mother called out to him. "Do you see the point where the two rivers meet?" she called, nodding towards a clearing in the forest below. "That's where the Garden of Eden is. When you get there, ask the angels for directions." "The angels?" Solomon squeaked. "Yes, the angels who guard the fiery sword." "A fiery sword? What fiery sword?" "Don't worry. There's nothing to be afraid of. Go and find a name for Samuel. Go on now, off you go. I'll see you when you catch up with us." At that, Solly broke away from the flock and gently glided down on the evening breeze towards a grassy clearing where two small rivers joined into one. Once they had landed safely, Samuel jumped down onto the short grass and leaned against Solly's long pink legs. "Now all we have to do is to find a couple of angels and a fiery sword. That shouldn't be too difficult," he said, with his usual squished up smile. And at that very moment, Solly interrupted him. "Samuel, listen, listen. Do you hear that noise?" Samuel pricked up his little ears. "Yes, I do," he said, and scampered off in the direction of a strange whooshing sound. As they rounded a large oak tree, they suddenly stopped in their tracks, because there before their unbelieving eyes was the most enormous burning sword, and it was spinning around in mid-air. Whoosh! Whoosh! It sliced through the air as it turned around and around. It was then that they saw the angels, two tall, handsome angels whose faces were glowing like the light of a setting sun. Nervously, the two of them approached the magnificent creatures, whose own wings kept them hovering ever so slightly above the ground. Samuel swallowed hard before speaking with more of a whisper than a squeak. Excuse me, are you an angel?" he asked one of the creatures, before scampering between Solly's legs, which were shaking like twigs in a thunderstorm. The angel looked at the other angel and smiled before looking down and speaking. "Who are you looking for?" Samuel cleared his throat. "We're looking for the man, Adam," he said. "What do you want with the man?" the second angel asked. "My friend needs a name," said Solly bravely. The angel smiled again, as if he already knew. And of course, he probably did. "Adam no longer lives in this garden. You'll find him by the river close to the diamond waterfalls," he said. And with that, he fell silent and bowed his head toward the ground. Samuel thanked the angels, and as the two friends turned to leave, he began mumbling under his breath. "Oh, angels with shiny faces, spinning fiery swords, and waterfalls full of diamonds. What next? Oh, come on, Solly. We can't turn back now. We're nearly there." It only took a little while, with Solly flying above the sparkling waters of the river, before they came upon a beautiful waterfall from where water droplets fell like diamonds into the pool below. Nestling in the trees some distance from the riverbank, Samuel saw a small house built of wood, and he urged Solly to land close by. And soon they were standing at the door of the house, and Samuel could hear voices coming from inside. At first, he tried shouting to attract someone's attention, but his squeaky little voice was far too weak to be heard, and so he started scratching the wood with his hands. But that didn't work either. Finally, as Solly pecked at the door with his beak, Samuel started to bang on the door with all the strength as his little arms could muster. And just when he was about to give up, the door suddenly opened, and Samuel found himself looking up at a very tall and very handsome man, dressed in the most peculiar loincloth made of all different kinds of leaves, all sewn together. "So I did hear someone at my door," the man said, kneeling down to pick Samuel up in the palm of his hand. Samuel was so shocked that for the second time in as many days he was lost for words, and so it was Solly who spoke to Adam. "We are sorry to bother you, sir," he said, "but we've come for a name," he blurted out. "But you already have a name. You are a stork. I remember very clearly giving you your name when I named all the flying creatures," the man said. And then he looked at Samuel, who was still sat shivering in his hand. "But I don't remember seeing you specifically. But you do look familiar." Samuel looked up at Adam with his bright little black eyes. "My great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandpa fell asleep. And he missed his turn when you were giving everyone their names," he said. And then he went on to relate their great adventure. Well, by now the man's wife Eve had joined them, and she too was looking closely at Samuel. "He looks like a mouse to me," she said, running her finger along the full length of Samuel's bushy little tail, making him shiver from his toes to his whiskers. Now, of course, Samuel already knew that there were other kinds of creatures who looked a little bit like him and his family, but he wanted a name that belonged just to them and nobody else, so that's what he asked for. Adam laughed at his little visitor. "Yes, you should have your own name," he said. "After all, everyone else has a name that is just their own. So, because you came all this way to find me and knocked so hard on my door, I will give you not one, but 2 names. From this day forward, you will be called the Dormouse, Adam's mouse." So, the next time you see a little dormouse curled up in a ball of grass and leaves, or sleeping in a nest in the hole of a sycamore tree, remember how he got his name. Adam's mouse, the Dormouse. And try to remember this too. If you really want something, you must work really, really hard to get it. And just like Samuel and Solly, you will. And you can be sure that if you do that, you'll probably get the things you wanted. And remember too, that it always helps if you've got good friends to share the work with you. Doesn't matter how small or how tall you are, how strong or how clever you are, or even what language you speak or what colour your skin happens to be. If you work together with your friends and you are really determined, nothing will be out of your reach. Just like Samuel, Adam's mouse, the Dormouse.